I wasn't supposed to be home that night. The project I was working on in Denver had hit a snag, and the team agreed we'd need another 48 hours on site. But something didn't sit right with me. Maybe it was the way Lydia, my wife of 6 years, had been acting lately. She'd been cold, distant, smiling with her mouth, but not her eyes. So I lied. Told my coworkers I was feeling under the weather, caught an earlier flight, and landed back home just after 9 p.m. I didn't even tell Lydia I was coming. I figured I'd surprise her, maybe take her out for a late dinner, like we used to before life got busy and marriage got quiet. The house was dark when I pulled into the driveway. I remember thinking maybe she went out. But her car was there. Lights off, curtains drawn, and the front door? Unlocked. I walked in, silent as a shadow. I took a step, then another, until I heard the sound that burned into my memory forever. A laugh. A man's laugh. From upstairs. I didn't go up right away. I just stood there at the bottom of the staircase, hands shaking, chest hollow, the kind of empty you can't fill with anything but rage or resolve. That was the moment everything changed. Want to hear what happened next? Keep watching. I stood there, rooted to the floor like my legs had forgotten how to move. My heart was pounding so loud I thought they'd hear it upstairs. I heard her voice next. Lydia. Laughing. Whispering. Playful in a way she hadn't been with me in years. I could have charged up the stairs right then and there. Could have kicked the door open, demanded answers, screamed, cried, done what any betrayed man might do. But I didn't. Instead, I turned around, walked right back out the front door, and got in my car. I parked a block away, pulled out my phone, and did what every broken, humiliated husband does in 2025. I started Googling how to record audio legally in my own home. Because here's the thing. I wasn't going to let emotions ruin what needed to be done. Lydia had already started the war. I wasn't going to lose it because I played it sloppy. That night, I didn't sleep. I drove to a 24-hour electronics store and bought a couple of hidden cameras, motion sensors, and audio devices. I was calm, cold, even. I knew that without proof, she could twist anything. Say it was emotional cheating. Say I misunderstood. But I was done being the guy who trusted blindly. The next morning, while Lydia was still asleep, or pretending to be at her friend's house like she'd been doing lately, I returned home and began setting the stage for the truth. This wasn't about revenge. Not yet. It was about control. The next few days were a masterclass in pretending. I kissed her forehead in the mornings. I brought her coffee. I even asked how her yoga class was, knowing damn well she hadn't stepped inside a studio in months. Every word that came out of her mouth was now evidence in my mental case file. Every excuse, every lie, every girl's night out was a piece of a puzzle she didn't know I was building. The tech I'd set up worked flawlessly. I hid a pinhole camera in the air vent facing our bedroom door. Another in the hallway. I rigged a motion-activated recorder under the living room table. I even slid a GPS tracker into the lining of her gym bag. I wasn't just watching her. I was studying her. And what I saw made my stomach turn. 3 nights later, while she thought I was out of town again, she brought him over. Same guy. Tall, dark hair, some generic cologne I could smell even days later. I watched them laugh on our couch, drink wine I paid for, and walk up the stairs together like it was their home, not mine. That night, I sat in my car and watched the footage over and over. Not because I needed to confirm what I already knew, but because I needed to kill the last piece of me that still wanted to believe in her. And as it died, something else was born. Resolve. This wasn't going to be some messy screaming match or a sad apology-laden conversation. This was going to be an execution. Clean, calculated, final. All I needed was a few more days. I started gathering financial documents. Made appointments with 2 different attorneys. Froze the joint credit card. Quietly moved half of our savings into a separate account under my name only. I wasn't just preparing for a divorce. I was preparing to erase her from my life, legally and emotionally, and leave her with nothing she could twist or manipulate. Because when the confrontation came, it would be on my terms. You won't believe what happened when I finally confronted her. The morning I chose to confront her felt like any other. That's how I wanted it. Lydia was in the kitchen, scrolling her phone like she always did, drinking the green smoothie she made to keep up appearances of health and balance. She didn't even look up when I walked in. Back from the gym early, she asked without lifting her eyes. I almost laughed. Instead, I placed a small envelope on the table in front of her. Cream-colored. Unmarked. "What's this?" she said, glancing at it, already annoyed. "Go ahead. Open it." Inside were 3 still frames, taken from my footage. One of her and the guy entering our bedroom. One of him shirtless on our couch. And the last one, her straddling him, face turned toward the hallway camera. Her smile frozen in betrayal. She went pale. Her hand trembled slightly, but she still tried. This isn't what it looks like. No, I interrupted. My voice was level, almost eerily calm. It's exactly what it looks like. And it's recorded in full HD. Want to see the whole thing? Her eyes darted around like she was looking for a way out of the conversation. Or the room. I don't know what to say, she mumbled. I leaned forward, elbows on the table. Good. Because I'm not looking for an apology. I'm looking for a clean break. You have until the end of the week to get your things and leave. The papers are ready. You'll find them on the dining room table. You're not getting a dime more than what the law requires. And believe me, after the evidence I have, there's not much the law requires. The mask cracked. Finally. You're really doing this? She hissed. After everything I gave you? I looked her dead in the eye. What you gave me was fake. And what I'm giving you is freedom. You should be thanking me. She stormed out. Slammed the door to the bedroom. I didn't follow. I didn't yell. I poured myself a coffee and sat on the patio, breathing in the cool morning air, knowing I had just taken back control of my life. But the fallout wasn't over yet. The lover? He had no idea what was coming either. I didn't plan on confronting the guy at first. Honestly, I didn't care who he was. He could have been some random fling, a mistake she made in a moment of weakness. But after seeing him repeatedly in my house, in my bed, eating my food, walking around in my clothes, I realized something. He wasn't just a fling. He thought he belonged. That was his mistake. I got his name from a background check service, found his number through her synced contacts, traced his LinkedIn, even saw his gym check-ins on Instagram. Like most men who cheat with married women, he thought he was invisible. I waited until after Lydia moved out. She packed in a whirlwind of resentment and fake crying, but I didn't flinch. I didn't raise my voice, didn't ask questions. I just watched her go. Once the house was quiet again, I reached out. A simple text from a new number. Hey, I think we should talk. You've been spending time with someone who used to be important to me. He responded 2 minutes later. Who is this? I'm the guy whose house you've been sneaking into. Lydia's husband. No response. For hours. Until he finally cracked. I didn't know she was married. I swear. Liar. I invited him to meet me at a quiet coffee shop on the edge of town. Neutral ground. No cameras. No yelling. Just two men and a truth that had to be spoken. When he showed up, he looked nervous, fidgeting like a teenager caught skipping school. He started to apologize, but I held up a hand. I'm not here to fight, I said. I'm not here to forgive either. He blinked. Then what do you want? I slid a folder across the table. Inside, every screenshot, timestamp, audio clip, and GPS log I'd compiled over 2 weeks. His face paled as he flipped through it. I don't need anything from you, I said. But I want you to understand, this isn't just about sleeping with a married woman. It's about walking into another man's life, uninvited, and thinking you get to keep what you stole. He stammered something. I didn't care what. I stood, placed a business card on the table, and said, if either of you tries to contact me again, you'll hear from my lawyer. Then I left him there, sitting in silence, surrounded by the weight of the truth. I never saw him again. But the real challenge? That came next, rebuilding. The days after the confrontation felt surreal. The house was quieter now, too quiet, almost sterile. No perfume lingering in the bathroom. No clinking of her wine glass at 9 p.m. No arguments about chores or whose turn it was to cook. Just me and my thoughts in a space that suddenly felt too big. At first, I hated it. It's strange how you can miss something that broke you. I missed the familiarity, the illusion, the good morning texts, the way she used to wrap her arms around me when I got home, even if I later learned those arms had held someone else. But emotions are liars. So I made a rule. Every time I caught myself missing her, I would do something for me. I started running again. First just down the street, then around the lake, and eventually, 10 miles at a time. I cleaned out the garage, threw out everything she ever touched. Her books, her mugs, the box of cards she never met. Donated the rest. I replaced the mattress. That one felt symbolic. My lawyer moved quickly. The divorce was smooth, on my terms. She didn't contest. Maybe because she knew she'd lose. Maybe because she'd already moved in with the other guy. I didn't ask. Didn't care. Work became my therapy. I threw myself into projects, took on more clients, even got promoted. Funny how stress looks like motivation when you need an escape. And slowly, day by day, I began to feel like a man again. Not a husband. not a victim. A man. One who survived betrayal without letting it rot his soul. But just when I thought the worst was behind me, Lydia reached out again. Yeah, she wasn't done. It started with a text. Simple. Deceptive. Hey, can we talk? I stared at it for a long time. Not because I was tempted. God, no. But because I was stunned she even had the nerve. This was the woman who blew up our marriage without a hint of remorse. Who laughed with another man in the house I built. Who packed her bags and left like she was the victim. And now, after weeks of silence, she wanted to talk? I didn't reply. The next day, I got a call. Unknown number. I let it go to voicemail. Hey, it's me. I know you probably hate me, but I've just been thinking a lot. About us. About everything. I think I made a mistake. That word. Mistake. Cheating isn't a mistake. It's a decision. 100 little choices that all lead to a bed that wasn't ours. Still, curiosity got the better of me. I didn't want closure, but I did want to see what story she was telling herself. So I agreed to meet. We sat on opposite sides of a park bench, like strangers. She looked thinner, tired. Makeup hiding the damage, but I could see the cracks. I'm not happy, she said softly. I thought I would be, but he's not you. I didn't realize what I had until it was gone. I didn't say anything. I let her keep digging. I don't want anything from you, she went on, which was, of course, a lie. I miss us. I miss you. I finally spoke. You miss the version of me who trusted you. That man doesn't exist anymore. Tears welled up in her eyes. But I wasn't moved. I'd cried enough for both of us already. She reached for my hand. I pulled back. I don't hate you, I told her. But I'll never love you again. That died the night I heard you laugh upstairs. She wiped her face and nodded. Maybe she expected forgiveness. Maybe she expected me to waver. But I stood, thanked her for meeting, and walked away. Some people you leave behind once. Others, you leave behind every time they come knocking. But I wasn't done healing. There was one last place I had to go, to say goodbye to the version of me she destroyed. I drove out to the coast that weekend alone. It was a 3-hour trip through winding hills and scattered farmland, the kind of drive that gives you too much time to think. But that's what I wanted. Needed. A final conversation with the version of me that still lingered in the corners of my mind. The loyal husband, the trusting fool, the man who thought love was enough. I parked near a cliff that overlooked the water. The kind of place we used to visit when we first fell in love. Back when everything felt simple. Back when I thought promises were sacred. The wind was sharp that day. The ocean below crashed into the rocks with a kind of beautiful violence. Fitting, I thought. I sat on a bench and took out a photo I'd kept folded in my wallet. One of the two of us, smiling in some cafe in Italy. Her head on my shoulder. My arm around her waist. A moment that felt eternal at the time, and now felt like a lie. I stared at it for a long while. Then I whispered something I hadn't said out loud since the day she left. I forgive you, but that doesn't mean you get to stay. I ripped the photo in half, then into smaller pieces, and let the wind take them. Somewhere between the cliffs and the sea, I let go. Of her. Of the pain. Of the man who thought marriage was invincible. When I drove home, something inside me had shifted. I didn't feel broken anymore. I felt free. And that freedom gave me space to rebuild, not just my life, but myself. Because healing isn't a destination. It's 1,000 quiet choices to keep walking forward, even when the past tries to drag you back. But healing wasn't the only surprise waiting for me. Someone unexpected came into my life after that. I met her at the farmer's market, of all places. It was a Saturday morning, the kind where everything feels slow and peaceful. I just picked up some fresh bread and tomatoes when I accidentally bumped into someone rounding a corner. Oh, sorry, we both said at the same time, then laughed. Her name was Harper. She had this effortless energy about her. Hair in a messy bun, no makeup, a sunflower tote bag slung over her shoulder. She didn't flirt, didn't try to impress. She just talked to me like I was a person, not a project. We walked through the rest of the market together, chatting about everything and nothing. Local honey, overripe peaches, how fall always arrives late in this town. It was the first genuine conversation I'd had in months that wasn't about betrayal, lawyers, or recovery. She didn't ask if I was married. Didn't ask why my eyes looked tired. She didn't dig. She just existed in the moment. And for the first time, I allowed myself to do the same. Over the next few weeks, we kept running into each other, at the same cafe, on the jogging trail, once even in line at the DMV. It became a joke between us. Either you're stalking me, she said once with a grin, or the universe is really pushing this. I smiled. not fully knowing what it meant yet. Harper wasn't a replacement. She wasn't a cure. She was a reminder that life continues, that not everyone lies, that connection doesn't have to come with strings or scars. I didn't tell her about Lydia, not right away. I didn't want that to be the lens through which she saw me. I wanted her to meet this version of me, the one who'd been burned and rebuilt. But one day, I'd have to tell her the full story. And when I did, I found out something surprising. She had her own story too. It was late October when I told Harper the truth. We were sitting on a picnic blanket near a quiet lake just outside the city. The trees were shedding their last golden leaves, and the sky had that soft, tired blue that only shows up in autumn. It felt like the right moment. I didn't dramatize it, didn't make myself a hero. I told her everything, how I came home early, what I saw, how I stayed quiet, plotted, documented, divorced. I told her about the cameras, the confrontation, the man on the bench, even the drive to the cliffs. She didn't interrupt once. When I finished, I looked away, expecting the conversation to shift, or the atmosphere to change. Maybe she'd see me differently, like I was damaged goods. But she didn't speak for a moment. Then, softly, she said, "Mine cheated too." Those 3 words hit harder than I expected. She told me about her ex-fiancé, about catching him after 6 years together, about how she'd invested in a future that was built on lies, how she moved across the country just to breathe in peace again. We sat there for a long time after that, not saying much. Just 2 people who had walked through fire, recognizing the same ash on each other's skin. There was something healing in that silence. No pity, no performance, just presence. That night, when we parted ways, she hugged me tighter than usual, and I realized something important. Love after betrayal doesn't come like a lightning bolt. It comes like a sunrise. Quiet, gradual, impossible to ignore once it arrives. And though neither of us said it aloud, I think we both knew. This was the beginning of something real. But life wasn't done testing me yet. Because just when I found my peace, Lydia came back one last time. And this time, she wasn't alone. What did she want? It was a rainy Thursday afternoon when I opened the door and saw her again. Lydia, soaked from the rain, arms crossed, eyes full of that old mix of arrogance and desperation. But this time, she wasn't alone. Next to her stood a woman in a blazer, clutching a folder, clearly a lawyer. Not mine. I didn't say a word, just stepped aside and let them in. I didn't feel fear or panic, just cold curiosity. They sat at the kitchen table, the same table where I'd once slid proof of her affair across the wood. She looked uncomfortable now, like she wasn't used to being the one at a disadvantage. Her lawyer did most of the talking. Ms. Lydia Harding believes that there was a misrepresentation of financial assets during the divorce proceedings. She is pursuing a motion to contest the settlement agreement under grounds of. I cut her off with a slight chuckle. "You're serious?" The lawyer continued. "She feels that in light of new information, particularly concerning the value of your company and investments at the time, she may be entitled to additional compensation." That was the moment I stood up. I walked into the study, pulled a thin binder from the locked drawer, and dropped it on the table. Here are the original disclosures. Signed, notarized, time-stamped, and verified. And here, I flipped to a second section, are the receipts for the separate account I moved funds into before filing, with dates and full legal compliance. The settlement was fair. She got what the law said she deserved. And frankly, more than I wanted to give. The lawyer skimmed it, her expression hardening. "I'd advise you," I said calmly, "not to waste your firm's time on this. Because if you do, I will countersue for harassment, and I will win." Lydia's face was flushed now. She stood, voice sharp. "You're really going to act like I didn't give you years of my life? Like I meant nothing?" I met her eyes. "You gave me years of lies. And now you're trying to rewrite the ending. But the story's over, Lydia." They left not long after, her steps fast and angry, her heels clacking down the sidewalk like a tantrum dressed in leather. And as the rain picked back up, I felt lighter than I had in months. She had come to reopen the wound, but all she proved was how fully it had healed. I called Harper that night. We laughed. We planned a weekend trip. And in that moment, I realized I had finally, truly moved on. But there was still one last thing I had to do to mark this chapter as closed. There's something symbolic about fire. It doesn't ask for permission. It doesn't hesitate. It just consumes, clean, absolute, and final. That's what I wanted. Not revenge, not more lawyers, not even an apology. I wanted release. So I gathered everything that still connected me to Lydia. Not the legal documents. I kept those, obviously. But the memories. The wedding album. The anniversary cards. The cheap souvenirs from vacations that were supposed to bring us closer. Even the journal I kept during the darkest nights when I needed to write just to stay sane. I drove out to my uncle's property in the countryside where he had an old fire pit. No one was around. Just me, the woods, and the ashes waiting to be made. One by one, I tossed each item into the flames. I didn't cry. I didn't rage. I just watched the past burn. Watched it blacken, curl, and dissolve into something weightless. When the fire died, I sat there in the silence. It didn't feel like victory. It felt like peace. I pulled out my phone and sent Harper a photo of the fire pit, still smoldering. No words. She just replied with a heart emoji and, "Welcome back to yourself." That night, I slept deeper than I had in over a year. No nightmares. No mental rewinds of betrayal or confrontation. Just sleep. The kind that comes when your soul finally stops bracing for the next hit. And when I woke up, I didn't check my phone for Lydia's name. I didn't replay conversations or what-ifs. I just got up, made coffee, and started my day. I had no idea what the future held. But for the first time in a long time, I was excited to find out. But healing isn't just about burning the past. It's about building the future. Peace isn't loud. It doesn't arrive like a parade or a Hollywood ending. It's quiet, slow-earned. Mine came in little things, waking up without dread, running without needing to outrun my thoughts, laughing and realizing it wasn't forced. And then, one morning over coffee and silence, I realized something. I was happy. Not the surface level, "I'm doing okay" kind of happy. The kind that sneaks up on you. The kind that doesn't need to be posted or proved. The kind that grows when no one's looking. Harper and I had grown close, organically, carefully. We weren't rushing. There was a mutual understanding between us, shaped by the fractures we'd both survived. She never tried to fix me, never treated me like a project. She just showed up, consistently, gently. And I did the same. We started spending more time together. Grocery runs turned into home-cooked dinners. Walks became road trips. Her toothbrush found a quiet home next to mine. I didn't compare her to Lydia, not even once. She existed in her own space, untouched by the past. And she earned that space. One Sunday afternoon, we were working on a garden in my backyard, something I'd always put off. She wiped dirt across her cheek and grinned at me. "This is what healing looks like, huh?" she said. I nodded. "Yeah. And maybe what building looks like, too." Because I wasn't rebuilding my old life. I was creating something entirely new. Something stronger. Something true. But I knew I had one last thing to do. Not for Lydia. Not even for Harper. For me. A final message to anyone who's ever felt what I felt. Who's been broken and betrayed. I wanted to tell them what I learned. If you've made it this far, maybe you've been where I was. Maybe you've sat in silence, staring at a ceiling, wondering how someone who promised to love you could lie so easily. Maybe you've played detective in your own home. Maybe you've screamed into your pillow so no one would hear. I've been there. And if there's one thing I want you to take from my story, it's this. You will survive. Not just survive, you will rebuild. Not just rebuild, you will grow stronger. Not just stronger, you'll learn how to live honestly again. Betrayal doesn't define you. It doesn't make you weak. It doesn't mean you were unworthy or that you missed some obvious sign. It means someone else made a selfish choice, and you now have the power to make your own. I learned that silence can be strength, that you don't need to scream to be heard, that sometimes the most powerful revenge is simply healing without them. And most of all, I learned to stop waiting for an apology I was never going to get. Lydia never truly apologized. Not really. Not from the heart. But that's okay. Because her apology isn't what set me free. My own forgiveness did. Not forgiveness for her, but for myself. For staying too long. For trusting too much. For believing that love had to mean sacrifice. Now, I love differently. I live intentionally. And I'm no longer scared of being alone, because I know I can stand on my own 2 feet. And if you're going through something like this, please hear me. You deserve better. You deserve honesty. You deserve peace. And it will come. Maybe not today. Maybe not tomorrow. But if you keep walking forward, you'll get there. I did. And if I can, so can you. If this story resonated with you, don't forget to leave a like, drop a comment, and subscribe for more real, emotional stories every week. Your support helps this channel grow and reach others who need to hear they're not alone. Turn on notifications so you never miss the next one.